Hello and welcome to the SPN Circular Economy Conference. We have a range of speakers giving insight into ways companies and packaging can be more sustainable. Dr. Lars Hancke will now highlight current and future trends in recycling of printed packaging.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lars Hancke. I'm Business Development Manager at Huber Group Germany. Today, I would like to share some information with you about what printing inks can contribute to sustainable packaging. So first of all, a brief introduction about who we are. Huber Group is a leading international printing ink manufacturer with a history of more than 250 years and still family owned. So we are present worldwide. As far as flexible packaging is concerned, our major focus is in Europe and as well as in India, where we also manufacture our own raw materials. So let's dive into the matter. In the first slide, I would like to present to you a diagram from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, demonstrating that if we continue in business as usual, plastic consumption in general, not only packaging, will almost double within the next years until 2040. And to break this plastic wave, we need to address the issue on different levels. There will be no single solution, no silver bullet to get rid of the plastic wave. But by acting on different levels, we can solve the problem. One of these levels is reducing packaging. Of course, by avoiding over-packaging, but also by implementing reuse models. The second level is substitution, so mainly in packaging sector, substitution of plastic by paper. And last but not least, it is of course recycling, short-term rather mechanical recycling, and medium to long-term also chemical recycling. So let's have a look at the trends in recycling. Substitution of film by paper plays, of course, a major role. Paper is regarded at least as being more sustainable, and this is justified by a number of factors. It is made from renewable resources, it is compostable, and at least in Europe, we have a high recycling quota already established. Paper is one single material within plastic packaging. We have to look at different materials, and especially when these are combined together, then we have a challenge in recycling. The last couple of years, we have seen a trend towards monomaterials, towards the materials that account for the largest share in flexible packaging. That means polyester for the bottles, which is already well established, but also for the packaging films, polyolefin films like monopolyethylene or monopolypropylene. And last not but least, from our perspective as a printing ink manufacturer, it is of key importance what the printing inks contribute to recycling and what is their role in recycling, mainly in mechanical recycling. During the recycling process, they can have potential negative impacts. Of course, starting with the fact that if you directly mechanical recycle printed packaging, you will not end up with a transparent recyclant. So you will always add some shade, some color to the recyclant. But also from a chemical point of view, the printing inks can decompose. Mechanical recycling involves quite high temperatures, 240, 250 degrees Celsius. And at these temperatures, the printing inks can degrade, can create volatile breakdown products that can negatively impact the organoleptic properties of the recyclate, as well as the physical properties and as well the toxicological properties. So our target is to create printing inks that enable recycling. So now after this introduction into about the trends, let's have a look what we can do as an ink manufacturer to contribute to sustainable packaging solutions. As a starting point, of course, we need to make sure that our products, our printing inks, are not toxic to the environment and that they are produced in a sustainable manner. Therefore, we have decided to go for cradle-to-cradle certification because it combines, for us, in an ideal manner, the approach of product sustainability with the process that is used to produce the printing inks. It looks into material health, which is product ecotoxicity. Material reutilization is about recycling, energy footprint, water footprint, as well as social code of conduct. We have provided a sound foundation for our more specific sustainability projects. And these look to a large extent into the role of printing inks in the mechanical recycling process. So first of all, we need to make a short excursion into ink chemistry. If we are talking about printing of flexible films, we mainly have to consider solvent-based ink systems, which of course contain solvent, but after printing the solvent is gone. So in the packaging, the other two major constituents, the binder and the pigment, have to be considered. And here we have, in the flexible packaging, we have different binder systems. Here we do not need to go too much into detail, but important in this context is that we have evaluated in the first step the impact of the binder on mechanical recycling. For this project, we have teamed up with other companies along the value chain in a project called PrintSig. First of all, we had a look at nitrocellulose and nitrocellulose polyurethane inks because they are the standard in flexible packaging. Roughly 3/4 of flexible packaging printing is covered with this type of ink because they are versatile, easy to handle, and have very favorable properties. But they have limitations in heat stability. So considering the temperature impact during mechanical recycling, we also already anticipated that we could have a challenge here with this type of ink. Therefore, in the second step, we had a look at polyurethane-based inks, which overcome the disadvantages of NC inks because they are more heat resistant, so they are suitable for sterilization. So therefore, they already provide a better starting point for mechanical recycling compatibility. And we also had a look at PVB, which, like PU inks, can be used in higher temperature applications. PVC we have not considered because PVC is not regarded as being compatible with recycling. So in the first step, we have investigated printing construction. We printed polypropylene or polyethylene with a white ink. White ink because the white pigment, titanium dioxide, is very stable at high temperature, so it doesn't play a role in terms of the temperature resistance of the ink. And then we use different binder systems like nitrocellulose, polyurethane, and PVB, polyvinyl butyrol. So starting with the NC inks, which is, as I mentioned, the standard in flexible packaging today, we ended up with this brown recyclate. We converted the printed films in this type of machine in the technical center of one of our partners, IREMA, the manufacturer of this recycling and re-extrusion machines. And so we have a significant change in color. White is converted into brown. And also we have a strong odor and a high degree of volatile breakdown products. With PVB, the situation is already much more favorable. So we only have a slightly yellowish hue in the recyclate and only a low level of odor and no volatiles. And if we do the same with polyurethane-based white, everything is stable, at least visually, and from a sensorial point of view, the recyclate is white without any change in the color, without any odor and no volatiles. So just illustrating the tremendous difference between different binder systems here with the film heavily printed with nitrocellulose, so 10% printing ink share in the packaging. So you see this is the worst case, but this is a high level of volatile breakdown products, whereas with PU we have nothing. So our polyurethane inks, like other heat-resistant inks, are ready and fit for recycling. And we use the recyclate also to make some film out of it. So the white recyclate, and this one here is brown because it was printed in brown plus white, so combination of the color with the white. And we could convert that with the in the technical center of Bruckner, another partner in the Prinzig consortium, could convert that into cast polypropylene film and also could convert it to BOPP with excellent properties. All the physical and converting parameters were almost at the same level as in a virgin film. So after we had this successful start with the polyurethane inks, we wanted to explore the system in more detail. So printing a simulation of a real packaging case using the 4-color set, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, 4 colored inks in combination with the white in a construction polypropylene monomaterial, so transparent polypropylene for printing, and metallized polypropylene like in a real-life crisp bag. And we also analyzed the single components, so the recycling of the virgin film printed only in yellow, only in red, to learn about the impact from the yellow and red pigment, and also the metallized film. And also we did a sample with PVB, which I have illustrated in one of the previous slides already. So again, the same setup, the same machinery, and this time not the white printed films, but the crisp bag. And again, no problem, no volatiles, no odor. And we saw that particularly with the samples that were printed in yellow and in red, we have the same color stability that we saw in the white. So the shade remains unchanged, and we do not have at least a visual impact from any pigment decomposition. For the metallized films, we get a gray recyclate, and for the complete crisp bag, fully printed and laminated, we get this green, dark green recyclate quality. And on top of the physical parameters, we also evaluated what happened at the molecular level. So we extracted the recycled material and analyzed that for any breakdown products. Here, the accredited and independent lab SQTS in Switzerland, who are specialized on this type of analytical investigation, they helped us and analyzed the material for compliance with the European Union and Swiss ordinance legislation for food packaging. And in the end, we found, or they confirmed, that this material could be used for food packaging if it was a virgin material. Of course, for recyclate reuse in food packaging, more stringent legal requirements apply, but for us, this was a benchmark showing that we have a high-quality recyclate, not only from a physical point of view, but also as far as the chemical composition is concerned. And we could even close the loop. So the recyclate that we generated from this crisp bag, we used to make a second life packaging, again with our partners, and printed a polypropylene that contained 30% of this recyclate, printed that again with PU inks and laminated that against virgin BOPP to generate this second life plastic bag. So basically, if we use the right printing ink, which is heat stable, we can go directly into mechanical recycling and can expect that we get a much higher recyclate quality than in the current setup, where most of the packaging, as mentioned before, will be printed with nitrocellulose inks that are not ideally suitable for direct mechanical recycling. But we do not think that it will be possible to convert all of the nitrocellulose inks that are the standard today by more recycling-friendly alternatives. So we are also investigating solutions where we eliminate the printing ink impact on recyclate quality by removing the ink, by de-inking. And for us, the most promising process for doing that is a process so-called hot washing, because it is already used in PET bottle recycling. So they are washed with a 2% sodium hydroxide solution for 15 minutes. We anticipate that this process can also be used in mechanical recycling of printed films. And our investigations show that a standard nitrocellulose ink that is applied in surface printing can really be removed very easily with this process. But then we create another challenge. The printing ink gets dispersed into the washing solution, and then of course you will need to clean the washing solution. To avoid this, we have developed special ink combinations and de-inking primers that will make sure that the inks will come off in larger particles and can be removed more easily by filtration and without contaminating the washing solution. Last but not least, our intentions are also focused on improving the performance of monomaterial packaging. Of course, it is important to look into afterlife scenarios, what happens to packaging in the after-use phase, but also the performance level during the lifetime as food packaging needs to be maintained if possible. So one of the major criteria, performance criteria for packaging is, of course, protection of the packed good. For instance, when it comes to foodstuff that is sensitive to oxygen. And usually for this type of foodstuff, film combinations are used, so polyester or polyamide films combined with a heat-sealable polyethylene layer, for instance, or also with a central layer of aluminum to have the best possible barrier properties. Unfortunately, our recycling-friendly monomaterials, polypropylene or polyethylene, have very poor oxygen barrier properties. So we need to enhance them in terms of the barrier properties to maintain the performance level when it comes to packing oxygen-sensitive foodstuff. And here we have developed a barrier lacquer solution. It is a water-based barrier lacquer that we combine with a primer. And depending on the specific application, if it's inside a laminate or in surface printing, of course, depending on what we can apply, we usually get single-digit oxygen transmission rate so that we can cover at least the medium performance range for oxygen-sensitive foodstuff. For coffee and other highly sensitive materials, we still need to invest some development work. And finally, we also support the trend towards paper to enhance the performance of paper with our water barrier lacquer. So they enhance the water resistance of the paper, and thus we can extend the range of application for paper-based packaging. We have different versions of these water barrier lacquers. They are either suitable for indirect food packaging, so for being printed on the non-food contact side, or we also have solutions for direct food contact, at least for certain type of foodstuff. So in a nutshell, we can support new packaging concepts, facilitate new packaging requirements. When it comes to monomaterials, on the one hand, we look into suitable inks that can either be removed easily in de-inking or that are compatible with direct mechanical recycling. And on the other hand, we look into the performance of these new monomaterials by developing barrier lacquers. I mentioned oxygen barrier already. We also have UV barrier lacquer, and for paper applications, the water barrier. So in conclusion, the design for recycling is feasible if you use the right material combination, relying on monomaterial films, on barrier coatings and printing inks, and of course, suitable lamination adhesives have also to be considered. But we need cooperations to establish the best solution for your specific application. So share the vision with us. Thank you very much for your attention.
We welcome back Nerida Kelton from the World Packaging Organization. She will talk about the organization's goals and the current state of the packaging industry.
Well, firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organisers for extending an invitation to the World Packaging Organisation to be here today with you. Now, the World Packaging Organisation has 66 member countries around the world. And we have a number of really important goals that we're trying to achieve. They are to reduce food waste, reduce packaging waste, and increase packaging awareness through education. The WPO would like to target unnecessary problematic materials and encouraging the phasing out of materials that are not recyclable or recoverable, and encouraging the development of mono-material packaging. We have a number of partnerships around the world that help us to achieve these goals, and they're included and cover circular and sustainable design, and also safe food packaging design, and the important role that packaging plays in minimising food loss and waste. And one of the areas that we always encourage people to consider embedding in their businesses is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals, and it doesn't matter how big or how small you are, these goals are extremely relevant to you when you're talking about sustainability. But an area that we think is really important is now is the time to stop and rethink the way you're designing your packaging, and actually take this opportunity to redesign your packaging and consider the three important parts of the waste hierarchy, which is to reduce, to reuse, and recycle. But an area that we're challenged with is getting this balance right, because all too often around the world, we're talking about packaging waste, we're talking about sustainable packaging, we're talking about waste and materials. We don't talk about the environmental impacts and the significant environmental impacts that we have with food waste. And when you are talking about sustainability and sustainable packaging design, and you work in either food and beverage, you do need to make sure that you have the balance right and have an equal balanced conversation. And the reason is that if food waste was a country, it would unfortunately be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world. And what we are trying to do is find the optimum pack design. We have to make sure that we are not underpacking, which is wasting food. We also need to make sure we're not overpacking, which is wasting packaging materials. And as a part of what we do as the World Packaging Organisation, we have 2 meetings a year where we sit down and we talk to all of our members across the world. And it's really important to better understand their challenges and barriers and trends and innovations that are happening in the world of sustainability. And one of the loudest conversations that is occurring around the world, and more members are moving to this type of program, is extended producer responsibility. And extended producer responsibility puts the responsibility back on to the producers and the brand owners for what they're putting out into the market. And it is gaining global attention and adoption, but we also need to recognise that we need to harmonise EPR across diverse regions. There are so many different approaches to an EPR strategy, and we see this every single day. But the one thing about EPR is that it is a necessary piece of the puzzle, just one piece of the puzzle, to address current recycling challenges and concerns over single-use packaging waste. And a step further with extended producer responsibility is eco-modulation. And more European countries are looking to move this way, as is the United Kingdom. And what this is a program that penalises producers of problematic materials and difficult to recycle packaging, and incentivises companies that are putting materials that are in fact recyclable and recoverable out onto the market. And when you look at the landscape of extended producer responsibility schemes, this is just a snapshot of what's happening in Asia. And this is a positive outcome that more and more countries around the world are developing product stewardship programs, extended producer responsibility programs, national packaging targets to try and lower environmental impacts. And this is great news. And some of the things that are driving these changes is obviously single-use plastic directives. And we are seeing more countries every single day moving towards single-use plastic regulations. And in more recent times, we have seen India, Japan, and Scotland introduce their single-use plastic regulations. Another area that we're seeing a lot of change in is moving towards compostable packaging, certified compostable packaging, and ensuring that the compostable packaging that is put on the market is fit for purpose and is certified to European standards, TUV standards, AS standards. But at the end of the day, the result is to ensure that whatever compostable packaging is being put out onto the market is in fact certified. Container deposit schemes, deposit return and earn schemes, they all have different names, but they are important as well. And more countries are introducing a CDS scheme in their region. One of the advantages of these schemes is that it helps bring informal collectors and informal workers into the programs. It helps incentivize them and provide them with financial incentives, which are really important in developing countries. And there are significant benefits of CDS schemes. They do change consumer recycling behaviour. They offer financial rewards for consumers. And they also reduce the number of empty beverage containers that are disposed of as litter to landfill. Another area that's really important and we're watching grow is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Plastics Pact. And they have a network now around the world. Some are regional plastics pact and some are national plastics pact. And this is where producers and brand owners and manufacturers are working together collaboratively to try and lower single-use plastic that's out on the market and to get rid of problematic materials. Incorporating recycled content is a really important step in this journey that we're all on, and ensuring that we have circular design is recycled content is a great solution for this. And what we are now seeing is not only higher percentages of recycled content being put out into the packaging, but we're seeing that they are ensuring that they're communicating effectively to the consumers about this. So on pack, on billboards, advertising, etc., that they're really shouting out that they are made with 30% recycled plastic, 100% recycled plastic, and that they are on this journey of sustainable and circular packaging design. And obviously, recycled content is not just for rigids and not just for rigid plastics. There are many other substrates that have recycled content in them. We are seeing some significant shifts, particularly in recycled content being incorporated in food grade opportunities and also soft plastics. And one of the areas that we have started to see a shift in around the world is soft plastics return to store programs. And this is where we bring the consumers on the recycling journey. We encourage them to bring their soft plastics back to store, pop it in a bin, and it will be reprocessed into other solutions. At the moment, globally, a number of the solutions are things like furniture, photo frames, flower beds, patios, decks, and also roads. And roads is a very successful area for reprocessing of soft plastics that we're having trouble recycling around the world at the moment. And then we also are seeing closed loop collection programs like this one, product stewardship program, that incentivizes consumers to come on the journey with them with difficult to recycle things like coffee capsules. And so this has a three-tiered approach where it encourages consumers to either access one of these bags and pop their coffee capsules into these bags, return it through their curbside collection, or they can do it through online and return it with a free shipping bag like this, or they can go back into stores and return it. And then what happens is the aluminium is stripped out of the coffee capsules, it's reprocessed back into recycled content for future coffee capsules, and the coffee grounds that are left in the capsules are used for fertilizer and compost. And then we're also seeing some fantastic innovations in refill and reuse. And if you remember the waste hierarchy that I started with at the start of today, Refill and reuse is a very underutilized area, and we are starting to see more and more retail stores incorporating refillable options in store. And we're also seeing more in-home opportunities so that consumers can purchase in store and then just pop online and purchase their refills online. And there is also some significant changes in e-commerce where you can just do all of your ordering in your home and make it really easy. And then in some developing countries, we're seeing some fantastic initiatives like these where they come to you, they come to your door and they refill all of your products at your home. And you can do this through WhatsApp, you can do this through apps that are set up, but it's also a great way to get developing countries on board with these programs. And then one of the most important areas that we are seeing changes in is on-pack labelling programs for recycling. And what this is to ensure that we have truthful and honest logos on pack that consumers can intuitively understand so that they can work out how to dispose of the packaging. And if it has separable components that some are recyclable and some are not, then the logos on pack explain that. And that's what we want to see. We want to see more harmonized, consistent on-pack labeling programs around the world so that consumers can come on the recycling journey with us, but also easily pop the packaging into the right bins, because we don't want the packaging contaminating recycling streams. Because materials recovery facilities need the packaging to be a certain way. And recycling is more than what the item is made of. It's everything. It's about the shape, it's the size, it's the weight, the inks, the adhesives, it's everything. And if you've never been to a materials recovery facility and you are designing packaging, I would strongly encourage you to go and visit one so that you can better understand how to design your packaging for the market that you're selling in. And then what we're seeing is a lot of changes in soft plastics and flexible packaging. And this is a really important area because this is one of the areas that the whole world is challenged with, because right now our capabilities for recovery, collection, sorting and recycling are challenged. And so CFlex has really led the way in this, and more countries are now following CFlex's standards for flexible packaging design, and that's fantastic to see. So consistent, harmonized global approach to designing for soft plastics and flexibles. And they're working really hard on developing a new next generation recycling plant for flexible packaging. And they're also working right now on a materials recovery facility report that is trying to identify experimental studies on 200 different flexible packaging samples and how they actually truly do behave in a MRF. And then we also have a lot of product stewardship programs being developed and trialled around the world. And this is a wonderful example of encouraging consumers that really don't want to go and return their soft plastics in store because they find it onerous and cumbersome. This is about giving them the opportunity to capture and recycle their soft plastics in their home. And so this is a curbside collection trial that's happening, and it's a very successful program that's been growing. They've been expanding the regions for the last couple of years. And the idea of this is to really make it easy for consumers to be able to return their soft plastics from their home. And what we're trying to see with soft plastics and flexible packaging is circularity by design. And at the moment, what you're seeing is a lot of soft plastics being reprocessed through the return to store programs, being reprocessed into solutions that I mentioned, like furniture and roads. But what we would like to start to see is more circularity by design, where in fact the soft plastics and flexible packaging is being returned to store and then captured through advanced recycling back into packaging, because that is circularity by design. And we have seen Nestle announced, the first company in the world, that they are now incorporating 30% recycled content into their soft plastics, specifically into their chocolate. And Cadbury have followed them with an equal percentage of recycled content. And we will see more and more of that happening around the world. Advanced and chemical recycling is happening. We can't ignore it. And it is being developed. There are a lot of facilities and infrastructures being built around the world right as we speak. And then the WPO is extremely proud of the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide. And we launched this about 8 months ago. And it's designed to create a common understanding of circular packaging design. It's really easy to understand and use. It's accessible by the WPO website, free of charge to everyone. And it's to help you to understand how to design your packaging for state-of-the-art materials recovery facilities. It has this wonderful aesthetic design to it, and it has a traffic light system, which makes it really easy for people to understand whether they are designing their packaging for state-of-the-art materials recovery facilities. And the one thing that I really like about it is that it covers all aspects and all components of all substrates of packaging. So it's not specific to one material. It has wonderful material-specific recommendations, so it helps you to better design your packaging. And even if your country doesn't have the existing capabilities through materials recovery facilities to collect it, it's a wonderful opportunity to design your packaging now, to design out the waste and the problematic materials, because one day those facilities may come to your country, and we want you all to be prepared with the best design possible. And another really fantastic thing with the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide is we want it to be available to everyone, everybody around the world, free of charge in your language. And we now have it in 7 languages, and we're extremely proud of this. And we are working on multiple languages that are coming very soon. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to be able to provide a global harmonised approach to recycling and materials recovery facilities, and to help you design better packaging for circularity. We've also developed waste stream mapping tools. There are 21 available now. And these are some of the countries that you can see. They're all available on the WPO website. And they basically are the truth of what's happening in the country. So the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide is best practice, state-of-the-art materials recovery facilities, whereas the waste stream mapping tools are what is in fact recyclable, conditionally recyclable, and not recyclable in those countries. So if you're exporting to any of those countries, the 21 countries that are available right now, this is a fantastic tool, traffic light system, that will help you to understand what materials can and cannot be recycled in that country. And obviously we are working on another 12 countries at the moment, and we're really looking forward to launching those as soon as possible. Another area that's really, really important is about encouraging and recognising best practice in sustainable packaging design. And we have the World Star Packaging Awards, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And if you have a country or regional awards program, then it links to the World Star Packaging Awards, which is just exclusive entry into the World Star Packaging Awards. And it recognises global best practice, and they're just fantastic solutions. Again, all available on the WPO website, also available on the World Star Packaging Awards website. And you get an opportunity to go back through multiple years and see some fantastic innovations and designs, and they might give you some really good ideas for your own packaging. And these are our winners for Sustainable Packaging Design for 2022. And we had so many entries that were so fantastic. We ended up giving 5 winners, which is just great. And then we also have Packaging That Saves Food Special Award. And this is really near and dear to me because I've contributed to this award since its inception. And it's such an important topic for everyone around the world. We don't talk enough about the role the packaging plays in minimising food loss and waste across the value chain. And we also don't recognise companies that are working in this space and are, in fact, designing packaging that potentially minimise food loss. And so the Safe Food Packaging Award is so important And I would really encourage all of you to stop and consider, if you are working in food and beverage and you're entering your local awards program and you're just entering your food or beverage category, really stop and have a look at whether you could also enter it into packaging that saves food. It's a wonderful category, and I would really encourage more people to enter it. And these are our winners for 2022. Again, all available on the WorldStar website for you to look at in more detail. But we would really love to see more innovations being entered into these awards each year. And another area that a lot of people don't consider is designing packaging to minimise food loss and waste. And we have guidelines that we've been working on with a couple of our partners and WPO members, and they are to help you to design your packaging more effectively to minimise food loss and waste. And at the end of the day, it's just about getting the balance right. You can't be talking about sustainability or sustainable packaging design if you're only talking about packaging, packaging waste, packaging materials. You also need to look at the entire product, the production, the transport, the logistics, how it's protected, preserved, etc. And you also need to consider food and beverage. So I would really encourage everybody that works in food and beverage to ensure that you are looking at your local packaging waste targets or your local packaging regulations for sustainability, but also marrying them up to any food waste targets that your country has. Because at the end of the day, we need to get the balance right. Packaging plays a critical role in protecting, preserving, containing, transporting, and extending shelf life. Plastics plays an important role in this area. We need to ensure that packaging is fit for purpose, functional at first and foremost, and then we have to ensure that it is recyclable and recoverable at end of life. And at the end of the day, when you are thinking about designing your packaging for circularity or for sustainable packaging, it's about using less. It's about using it longer. It's about using it again and again and again and again, as many times as possible, and making sure that it is clean. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. And I really hope that there's at least one thing that you're taking away. If there are any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out at any point. And I look forward to seeing some wonderful sustainable packaging designs and safe food packaging designs being entered into the WorldStar Awards next year from you. So thank you and stay safe.
Next is Andrew McCaffery, Chief Strategy Officer at EcoVeritas. He will talk about EPR and why we may need a fundamental reassessment of our packaging.
I'm Andrew McCaffery and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for EcoVeritas. EcoVeritas is an outsourced packaging data collection and reporting company for extended producer responsibility and plastic tax. I'm here today to talk about EPR and the implications EPR, or extended producer responsibility, has on packaging and packaging format design. I'm going to talk about less about the detail of some of the extended producer responsibility legislation that's coming through, more about giving you an overview of it and some policy updates, and then what are the key considerations that you have to consider as a consequence of these regulations and what likely implications are the legislation is going to have. And then I'll leave you with some contact details if you need any more information from me. So first of all, what is extended producer responsibility? Well, extended producer responsibility used to be called product stewardship, and it's a very simple concept in that it's about the producer taking responsibility and paying for the environmental disposal of packaging or a product at the end of its life. So it's taking full responsibility for a product and packaging over its entire life cycle post-consumer. And In the concept of EPR regulations, it's about the producer paying that responsibility, paying for somebody to collect and recycle that material. There are a number of new policy legislation that's come in that would largely be under the umbrella of extended producer responsibility. And I'm going to go through these with you today and explain what they are, and then say, more importantly, discuss some of the potential implications, not necessarily just on levies, but what that could mean to your packaging selection choice, your format choice, pack type as well. So the 4 legislations that I want to discuss, or updates that I want to discuss, are the packaging waste regulations, EPR. These have been discussed an awful lot at the moment, going to come into force in 2024. The tranche of data collection starts later on this year. These are UK-wide regulations, although it has to be said that it is up to each individual UK administration to decide whether they're going to adopt it. So far, all the administrations have agreed that they will adopt it as a UK-wide regulation. There's deposit return schemes, and I'm going to focus when we discuss this on Scotland because they are the closest to having a go live for deposit return schemes. Again, these have all been adopted differently in each administration. I'll go through that in some detail, but more again, importantly, as to what actually this means to you and your material selection. What I'm not going to discuss in any detail is consistent collections for households. This is more focused towards local authorities who do the collection of materials, and it's about them having a consistent number of materials that they collect separately from the household, so that UK-wide you know exactly what you can put in your bins and you know that the local authority will collect that. So there's a consistent level of collection of dry recycled material from the households throughout the UK. I'm not going to discuss that in detail, but I will talk about it in relationship to EPR because it will have an implication into fees related to EPR. And the final one, the one that we are going to discuss first, is plastic packaging tax. And this is a tax that was introduced or last year rather, in April 2022, and this places a tax on plastic packaging placed on the UK market that has less than 30% recycled content in it. But again, go into slightly more detail when we discuss that in the next few slides. But the plastic tax is the only one that's actually currently in force within the UK. And again, it is a UK-wide tax. There is plastic tax in most other European countries. It's all put in a slightly different format. Generally 30% is the recycled content that they're looking for, above 30%. So plastic tax to start off with, introduced in April this year, an unusual one for environmental legislation. This one, it's HMRC that are the enforcement body, so it is viewed purely as a tax. It is introduced to try and get behavioural change, to try and force companies away from using virgin plastic, using more recycled content, or trying to switch out of plastic altogether. So who's implicated in plastic tax? Well, the people that are implicated in plastic tax are businesses that manufacture the packaging or the importer of the packaging. And what they have to do is, if you import or you manufacture more than 10 tons of packaging in any 12-month period, then you're obligated under these regulations. As part of that, you have to do quarterly reporting of how much packaging you have placed onto the market, how much plastic packaging you've placed onto the market. If it was greater than 30% recycled content, then you have to provide evidence to HMRC that that was the case. So you have to collect the type of packaging that you had and evidence that it had more than 30% recycled content. If it didn't have more than 30% recycled content, you still have to collect the data of how much you placed on the market, and you will then have to pay the tax of £200 per tonne for all the packaging that you placed on the market, plastic packaging that placed on the market that didn't have 30% recycled content. As I say, there's quarterly reporting, quite a lot of data has to be gathered for this. And what we have found so far is that the burden of data collection is such that some people are actually not wanting, even though they might have more than 30% recycled content, it has proved difficult for them to get the evidence from, especially if they're importing the material, and it's actually cheaper for them to pay the tax rather than go through the onerous data collection and evidence gathering. You have to gather evidence for every bit of packaging plastic packaging that you place on the market. It has to be at component level, so you can't just say the bottle has 30% recycled content, so I don't have to pay the tax. It's the bottle, it's the label, it's the cap. They're all counted separately, so you have to work it out for each component of the packaging that you're making up. So it's quite burdensome to do, and you can see some organisations, it's just physically not possible for them to get 30% recycled content or any recycled content into their packaging because they've got food contact and it's just not available for them at the moment. So you can see the implications of this as it is about changing consumer behaviour, or not consumer behaviour, business behaviour. And as such, the £200 could just be a starting point for the tax, and that could rise if they don't see consumer or company behaviour changing. The other thing about this tax is, if in theory you then get to the situation where you've got 100% recycled bottle, for example, recycled content bottle, there is only so much times that plastic bottle can be recycled before it gets degraded, and there does have to be an injection of virgin plastic into the system for the system to actually work. So it can never be a completely closed loop system because the chemistry of it just doesn't work to allow that to happen. So there will be, I think, the plastic tax, if it works, it will change behaviour. It will encourage people to move out of plastic into other materials. The price of our polymers, as demand starts to increase, because remember, this is not just a UK thing, this is a European-wide and global in many cases. Other countries are adopting it. This will increase demand for rPET. rPET will exceed virgin price. It already has done in many occasions. And demand, there will be shortages. So, if you are in a plastic packaging type, you really have to think of how are you going to secure your supply of rPET going forward. And if you can't secure that supply, what are you going to do when the levies start to change? So, now is about the time you have to really start thinking of, are there alternatives I should be going for here? Or can I secure my supply? Can I get into a closed loop situation and somehow get hold of that waste material? So that's plastic tax. The next one is extended producer responsibility reforms. It is to say, people keep on talking currently about the new EPR or EPR regulations coming in. There currently is extended producer responsibility regulations in force today. They are usually associated with PRNs or packaging recovery notes. They are in place. This is a reform of those sets of regulations. And as you'll see, this is a very significant reform and it's going to have far-reaching implications. So the reform is really taken initially from a European directive that was adopted before Brexit that says companies, producers in particular, should pay the full net cost of placing their packaging onto a marketplace. Now, what they mean by full net cost is they should pay for the cost of collection of that material minus any value they got for the waste material that they collected. Now, that has meant different things in different European countries. In some countries, full net cost is only meant the cost of collection of recycled material. So the material that was placed in your recycling bin, that is full net cost. It was the cost of collecting that material minus the material value. In other countries, it meant the cost of collecting the recycling bin, but also the cost of disposal of the residual waste bin where there was a packaging content in it. So it actually covered that cost as well, and obviously more significantly. So for the UK, we are adopting the principle of it's the total cost. It's the cost of disposal of general waste, as well as the cost of recycled waste. And even going further than that, it's the cost of litter bin collection as well, where there's packaging waste in it. And that's for England, Wales and Northern Ireland. In Scotland, it's a litter bin, as well as street litter cleaning costs are all being included in it. So you can see when you're starting to have all those costs there, the cost of EPR in the UK is going from about 100 to 200 million, which is the current cost, or the 300 million, which is the current cost today, to a predicted cost of 1.7 billion. And that's clearly going to have a fairly significant impact on the levies that you pay. Now, the levies are going to be based, first of all, in the first year, they're simply on the materials that you're currently paying levies on. So it's paper, plastic, aluminium, steel, etc. But in 2025, they're going to introduce a thing called eco-modulation, which is again designed to change behaviour and to force you or try and encourage you to move from unrecyclable material into more recyclable material. And so eco-modulation will place a penalty on material or packaging that is considered to be unrecyclable. And unrecyclable will be one that doesn't fit with the household consistent collection. So if you're and household consistent collection will be down to polymer type, it'll be down to format. So if you've got packaging where you're looking at it and thinking, it's multi-layer, it's in a strange format, it's never going to fit with a consistent collection. And also another thing to consider is what's products inside it. Is there going to be a lot of product left? Is it emptyability not very good and there's a high level of product left in it, and that product is moist, for example, it might not then be allowed to go into a dry mix recyclate separate collection. So you're going to have to start thinking about this, because that will increase the cost of your packaging type, or the levy that's going to be paid in the packaging. So again, this is likely to cause people to start considering switching to material that's likely to get less eco-modulation involved in it. Also, eco-modulation is going to be there for materials and formats that are considered to litter, and I've got a wee list of the products that they consider to end up as litter. And again, you will pay more for these packaging types if you place them on the market. But you can see in this slide that the cost, the levies, are going to increase from between 60 and 20 times. I mean, this is a huge amount of extra money that's going to be levied in. And how is the system all going to work? Well, it's a lot more complicated than the PRN system, which is already quite complicated. This diagram gives you an overview of it. You, as the producer, collect the information of what you place on the market, polymer type you're placing on the market, whether it's recyclable, whether it's got recycled content in it, whether you've done anything to the packaging that might make it unrecyclable, maybe put a sleeve in a plastic bottle or put adhesive that's going to cause problems, or maybe you had a recyclable film and you've got so much ink on that recyclable film that makes it unrecyclable. So you have to record all that information, and eco-modulation will be applied to it. You will have to purchase PRNs for the recycled content, or the recycling part of it, and that'll be based on recycling targets from government. And then for the collection of the waste, you have to pay money towards what's called a scheme administrator, who's not yet been appointed, but that scheme administrator takes the money and then pays it directly to the local authorities for the collection of material. So a much more complicated system that's coming into force, and more what is being simplified is previously you had shared responsibility in the current extended producer responsibility. It meant everybody in the supply chain paid a certain percentage towards it, with the retailers paying the largest percentage. That has now changed, and it's changed such that it is the brand owner or the importer that picks up, depending on who it picks up the majority of the obligation. So you see brand owner, importer, online marketplace, a pack filler in some situations, service provider or distributor, they become the single point where they have to pay 100% of the levy. So, this will change things and change the cost burden fairly significantly. But the brand owner, the importer, are ultimately the people that have more chance to specify what the material is going to be that they're placing, that's their packaging, more chance to change this packaging specifications as well than maybe the retailer has. And I won't go through this in talk, but these are the products that they consider to be in street litter, and these will be ones that would incur this additional levy as being part of litter. And I say, and emphasise, in England it's just what is placed in the bins and the collection cost for street litter bins, whereas in Scotland it's ground litter, so it's what's in the bin and also things that people litter on the streets. So the next one is deposit return systems. Deposit return system is a fairly simple concept. The producer places 20p on a beverage bottle. That beverage bottle is sold with the additional 20p on it. When the consumer is finished with the bottle, they return the bottle to a return point. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same retailer, to a return point, and that return point is either automatic or manual, and it gives them the 20p back. So it's a very simple concept. It's been around for a long time. It is known to drive up recycling rates, and that's why it's been introduced within the UK. As I say, unfortunately, each administration has introduced it slightly differently. In Scotland, DRS, and say this is one I'll focus on because we have more information on the DRS in Scotland, and it's got a go live date of the 16th of August 2023. In Scotland, it will cover all bottles from 50 millilitres to 3 litres, which is the same for all the administrations. However, in Scotland, it will cover glass, PET bottles, aluminium cans and steel cans. What's excluded is HDPE bottles and Tetra Pak. Now, the reason that HDPE bottles and HDPE bottles are excluded is, generally speaking, they are used for milk, and there's hygiene issues they thought for milk, and they wanted to exclude it. Tetra Pak, it's more to do with the shape of the Tetra Pak and reverse vending machines, capability of dealing with them, than any technical aspect to do with the packaging type. In England, glass bottles are not to be included, but they are to be included in Wales. So you can see that there's going to be confusion as to what is part of a DRS, what's not part of a DRS. The first thing to say is, in Scotland, you cannot place a bottle onto the Scottish market if you have not registered that bottle with Circularity Scotland, which is acting as what they call the scheme administrator. So you have to register the bottle. I think that it's within 6 to 8 weeks of the first time you place that bottle onto the market. You have to give them the dimensions of the bottle so they can approve that bottle to go on the market. Now, the dimensions and the weight of it are important because they're making sure that the bottle will fit into a reverse vending machine, an automatic reverse vending machine. So that's what they're certifying at that point. Usually in other DRSs, once they approve it, you're allowed to use a label which is specific to that scheme, and it's an anti-fraud measure. For some reason in Scotland, they're not going for a specific label. They are just using the barcode. So you have to provide Circularity Scotland with the barcode that you intend to use. And then this starts to be some, opportunities for fraud become fairly massive at this point. But anyway, that aside, one of the issues are that you won't get your money back unless the label or the barcode is still attached to the container. Now, this is one thing you have to start thinking about. If you've got your beverage container, it's a beer in a glass bottle and it's likely to be in a fridge. When you take that glass bottle out of the fridge, obviously you'll get condensation build up. The adhesive might fail, the label falls off. If the label has become detached from the bottle, then you will not get your refund on the bottle. And so it might be that you have to do direct printing onto glass bottles to ensure that doesn't happen. So it's one of the things that Circularity Scotland point out, that it's up to the manufacturers then to ensure that the label can always stay with the bottle and there's no chance of that barcode getting eroded, or if it is eroded or destroyed in any way, the customer won't get their 20p back. The other thing that's likely to change in this, or potentially again, is switching, and whether switching will happen between material types. When DRS was introduced in Germany many years ago, about 10 years ago, the retailers had more say on what they were prepared to accept and what they weren't prepared to accept, and they felt it easier to have a single format coming back to the stores rather than multiple materials or multiple formats. So they went for the PET bottles was their preferred thing, and overnight in Germany decimated the aluminium can market, and it just near enough disappeared over. The other aspect of DRS is if you're placing 20p on each beverage container, it may cause consumers to change their behaviour, and there has been research to say that this will happen. If you think of a pack of 12 multi-pack of Coca-Cola, for example, or any drink, you're going to place £2.40 additional charges onto the consumer. The consumer might decide that actually, rather than pay an additional £2.40, they would just rather have a 2 litre or a 3 litre bottle if they're available and only pay 20p on it. Now, obviously that's going to have a fairly major impact if you're somebody that's selling lots of small bottles. The other thing, it might have an impact on your product as well, because I would imagine a 3 litre bottle doesn't stay fizzy for as long as 12 individual cans. So there might be product change information that's required, or there might be a completely new design of a 3 litre bottle or a 2 litre bottle so that it actually can retain some of the fizziness for a longer period of time. So DRS will have a major implication for consumers. It will have a major implication for businesses as well. I mean, the other thing to consider when I say it seems trivial, but I'm sure it might actually be an issue. If people are going to drink the can on the go and then want to keep it till they can get to, once they've finished with it, keep it till they can get to a return point, they might be less keen on keeping a can that can't be sealed in their bag than something that can be sealed even when empty, because obviously even an empty can has a bit of residual material in it. So, is it about redesigning cans so that even when they're empty they can be sealed, or a can can be sealed and carried? So again, unintended consequences, but these things are happening. I think in this particular, it's a product or material switching is a definite possibility for people. Product pack size changing. The other aspect of DRS is if you're placing 20p on each beverage container, it may cause people consumers to change their behaviour, and there has been research to say that this will happen. If you think of a pack of 12 multi-pack of Coca-Cola, for example, or any drink, you're going to place £2.40 additional charges onto the consumer. The consumer might decide that actually, rather than pay an additional £2.40, they would just rather have a 2 litre or a 3 litre bottle if they're available and only pay 20p on it. Now, obviously that's going to have a fairly major impact if you're somebody that's selling lots of small bottles. The other thing, it might have an impact on your product as well, because I would imagine a 3 litre bottle doesn't stay fizzy for as long as 12 individual cans. So there might be product change information that's required, or I say there might be a completely new design of a 3 litre bottle or a 2 litre bottle so that it actually can retain some of the fizziness for a longer period of time. So DRS will have a major implication for consumers. It will have a major implication for businesses as well. I mean, the other thing to consider when I say it seems trivial, but I'm sure it might actually be an issue. If people are going to drink the can on the go and then want to keep it till they can get to, once they've finished with it, keep it till they can get to a return point, they might be less keen on keeping a can that can't be sealed in their bag than something that can be sealed even when empty, because obviously even an empty can has a bit of residual material in it. So, is it about redesigning cans so that even when they're empty they can be sealed, or a can can be sealed and carried? So again, unintended consequences, but these things are happening. I think in this particular, it's a product or material switching is a definite possibility for people. Product pack size changing, consumers wanting bigger bottles so that they're paying less in a deposit and less outgoings than multi-packs. I think it'll have a big impact on multi-packs. How you put the label onto the product to ensure that the label remains on the product and doesn't fall off, because say, if you've got 12 bottles of beer and all the labels are falling off the bottles when you take them out of the fridge, that's £2.40 that's been lost. Thing, if you have a party, that could be quite a significant cash output that you've lost. So there's all these things that would have to be considered in all this. So for me, the key considerations, I've went through them in the presentations, and just to summarise them and the four, how I think they might impact on packaging going forward. And I say I'm trying to get beyond just what the levies. It's what might this actually mean, and kind of being forewarned is forearmed. To think about it now, the cost of changing at this point when you're not being forced to is generally less costly than having to change something in a hurry. And I say, especially on our polymer types, when you're starting to think of plastics, is the cost of our polymers as demand will undoubtedly outstrip supply. What implication does that have for you? At which point does it become just too expensive to continually have your product in plastic packaging? If you can start making these decisions and think about now and develop a kind of strategic roadmap of where you want to go, because changing packaging is expensive, it's time consuming, but do it now and start thinking about it now, but think of it in the context as well as consumers, but think of it in the context of extended producer responsibility legislation, and also with an eye on demand and material scarcity and where you're actually going to gather this material from. So hopefully you've enjoyed that short insight into what's coming up and what's in place within extended producer responsibility. I said, my name is Andrew McCaffery and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer. My contact details are on this slide. If you want to ask me any questions about the presentation I've given or want more information regarding EPR or plastic tax, then I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you and get there. Okay, thank you very much and thank you for listening.
Let's hear how EPR can be used as a tool to help the industry make packaging circular and more sustainable.
A warm welcome and hello to all of you. I'm very happy to be with you today, and I'm having the chance to explain a bit how extended producer responsibility can be a tool to make packaging sustainable, so to contribute to our aim to come to a circular economy and to stop the one-way linear use of our materials. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Extended Producer Responsibility Alliance, which is a club of 31 members from Europe mainly, but also from members seated in Canada, seated in Colombia, Chile. So you can see that EPR is a tool and an opportunity that is used now by many countries, many industry associations to help us to make our packaging more sustainable. Our specifics is that all my members are working on a non-for-profit basis and are owned by the so-called obliged industry, so usually by the brand owners, by the retailers, and partly by the packaging producers. As you can see, we have members from very different realities, from countries with a high industrialization, let's say Belgium, the Netherlands, and so on, but also countries which are trying to become a member of the European Union, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Turkey. So a lot of different realities, different challenges. And the nice thing is that EPR can be used by all these countries. But used for what? And as you can see, this seems to be often the perception of people, minimum the perception of NGOs. Here you can see a dragon spying plastics in front of the council building in Brussels. So when politicians pass this dragon on their way to discuss new legislation, you can imagine that this has an influence and that plastic is perceived as a negative thing, plastic packaging. And especially if you see partly some results like this, people littering, or in countries where you have no waste management system, the plastics is ending up in the environment, then in the rivers, then in the oceans, and back to the beaches. And this is something, of course, we do not want, and we can avoid by a good waste management system, which is dealing in the end with those packaging we are still in need of, so that you cannot replace by reusable solutions which you cannot avoid, etc. But for the rest, which we are still needing, we have to give a solution. EPR is a tool developed, I think, in the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s in Germany, and it is giving a producer putting something on the market, a packaging, a product, an individual responsibility, so that this company is responsible even after the consumer has bought the product, the packaging, even after the consumer has used the packaging. So it has become useless, has become a waste. This is usually a financial and often an operational responsibility, so that collection, sorting, and recycling of these packaging is organized. As it does not make sense that every company is doing this of its own, in most of the cases, a collective entity has been founded, the so-called Producer Responsibility Organization, and we get a lot of the responsibilities from companies to fulfill these obligations on their behalf. For this, we need money. And so we are establishing a fee system, and each company has then to pay for his specific packaging a specific fee, so that the company can then integrate the external cost of managing the packaging into the product price. So the consumer, when he's buying the packaged product, a part of this price that the consumer is paying is reflecting the costs for the waste management and all the other activities of a PRO. And as you can perhaps imagine from this picture, a well-functioning PRO has a lot of activities. As already said, we collect the necessary funding to close the gap for the collection sorting, partly even for the recycling. But we also work a lot with all these stakeholders because each one of them is extremely important to keep this circle going. Like with the wheel is only working in a good way if it is really round. So each one of them has to understand his role and how to do it in the best case. And so in the PRO, you find usually experts which can help and work with all the stakeholders so that we can try to improve each part so that it is getting better and better and better, especially also to work with the packaging manufacturers and the fillers and bottlers to improve their packaging, to make it more sustainable so that you put only something on the market which can be recycled or reused afterwards. And here you can see all the different actors of this chain as well. And each one of them is as important as the others, like which I did not mention up to now, the state, the government. It's not only enough to put legislation in place. And you have to enforce it as well. You have to monitor it as well. So you need experts in the government as well who are understanding the business, who can not only monitor and enforce, but also work with the different actors, with the PROs, to establish a very good system for the country, for the people, because this is the most important thing, that our citizens believe in such a system so that they do the additional effort of sorting in a good phase, because only when you believe it, you will do it in a good way. If you don't trust the system, you do not care whether you put your plastics or your paper into which bin. Why EPR? Why not just the tax, or the state decides which packaging is good, which packaging is bad, what should be banned, what should be punished? In theory, that is of course a valid alternative to EPR. But the question is the state, is the government, are the ministries able to take such a decision, which will have very strong effects and impacts to our economy and our people as well? So the sexiness of EPR is that you use the intelligence and not only the money from industry to decide how to develop packaging in a better way, to phase out packaging which is non-recyclable or even harming the environment. So that's why EPR, we believe that EPR is the better tool, the more flexible tool. We can increase the fees if necessary. We can decrease the fees if the situation is better, which is usually quite difficult for a tax. Usually any tax is going just one way, up, up, up. Minimum in Germany, I'm not aware that the taxes have gone down. The sexiness of EPR as well, that it is a concept and not a business plan, which makes it a little bit more difficult because some people ask me, please send me your 200-pager how to implement EPR. And this is not existing. Minimum consultants which know EPR in a good way, they will not be able to send such a paper to you, because it depends on a lot of factors how to design EPR for your national situation. Of course, if there is international law or EU law, you have national legislation, even provincial legislation in some countries, like in Canada, for example. Even within the country, it depends which decisions obliged industry, if owning the PRO, is taking. And of course, a big part, an important part, our local authorities, they are usually deciding how the system should look like concretely in each village, whether you collect by bin or by sack or by container. And usually there's a good reason why a certain decision is taking, because you cannot collect in Venice in the same way as in the north of Norway or on a Greek island or in the center of Paris. So you always have to find the right collection for your very good packaging waste management system. As I said, we have the job to ensure that there is a convenient and efficient collection, sorting, and recycling infrastructure in cooperation with our partners. We have to somehow mirror the activities with a good and transparent data management system, because we have to know where the money is going to, which we are collecting, and the people as well as the material flow, how much packaging is put on the market, where it is collected, how much is sorted, what is sorted, and where it is recycled. In a perfect system, this has to be transparent, so each one can understand where the flows are going to. We should never be lazy and happy with the system. There's always room for improvement. So this is one very important thing as well. Usually, if the fillers, the retailers, the packaging manufacturers are owning their PRO, they are putting a lot of efforts to remind us that we have to improve, that we have to try to become more efficient from an economic, but also from an environmental point of view. So, in summa summarum, we have to try to make packaging fully circular while respecting the carbon efforts as well, because it does not make sense to have a circular packaging if we are causing more CO2 emissions than with a one-way packaging. This is, I think, very important. As I said, EPR is a concept, so everything is possible, and everything has been used in the various countries, especially in Europe. In some countries, the system is in majority in the hands of obliged industry. In other countries, you have competing PROs, up to 40 different PROs in some countries. You have an approach where industry is responsible for collecting, sorting, and recycling. In other countries, this is still done fully by local authorities, and the EPR system is mainly responsible for paying the bill and for trying to help them to improve the system. In some countries, you have a special system for commercial packaging. In some countries, we are just on the way on EPR for commercial packaging, like in Germany, France, and Spain. So a lot of different approaches, which means on the other side, a lot of different experiences. So a country which is new to the game can learn a lot and can see what is the best way to go on. The current situation, what did we achieve? You can see that a lot of countries have achieved a lot. Most of them are around 60% and more. Just a few are running late. The big question for me at the moment is how many countries are really using the new measurement point, because we changed the measuring what is recycled. We changed it, very easy explained, from the door of a recycler, the entrance door, to the middle of a recycling plant in front of the extruder for plastic. And this is a difference because the recyclers are doing a lot of work to design the optimum input material for the desired output material. As you can see in the comparison here, for plastics, the way is a bit longer, still to go. So you see the best countries are just above 50%. Some latecomers are around 10%. So still a long way to go. Quite unlikely that we are all making the targets in 2025, 55% recycling, especially with the new measurement point. But you see, there is room for improvement. We know what to do. We only have to implement it in the countries. We have to change systems, and this is, of course, taking a lot of time. But what is possible, you can see here. A country 25 years ago starting from scratch for most of the materials, like for plastics, below 10%, and now we are above 50%. So I think a very good example of what is possible and how it should look like in a reliable way, more infrastructure, more performance year by year. And this is especially achieved if you follow our golden rules, our take out of what is working in the best way. Clear separation of roles and responsibilities. Each one is knowing what he has to do and what he should not do, which is also good that there are no conflict of interest. Like the ownership of the PRO should stay with the obliged companies and not be done by others, by investors, by waste management companies. They should do their very good collection, sorting, and recycling, but they should not steer the system because, of course, they would tend to use their existing infrastructure, whereas we try to always invest in new infrastructure and use the best what is possible and not what is existing. Non-for-profit, because if you steer something like our government, you should not try to make money from this work. The money is for the operations. They should try to make profit, and I think this is the best way forward. Reporting and transparency so that we understand what is really going on and that all people trust. Constant information and education to the consumers, a very important matter. As I said, only if they believe in the system, they will do the right thing. Interestingly, if you compare our golden rules with the latest legislation from the European Union, the Waste Framework Directive, Article 8A, minimum requirements of EPR, you will see that a lot of these minimum requirements are reflecting what we think are the best practices and should be used. So hopefully within the next years, I think it is one more year to go, all the member states will follow these minimum requirements, or if not, the European Commission will enforce them to make it happen. But in reality, I think it's interesting what is happening in the countries. And my best practice, how to help companies to improve the packaging, to make them more sustainable, is in the Netherlands, the Netherlands Institute for Sustainable Packaging, KIDV, a team of, I think, 10, 12 people who are constantly working on projects to make packaging more sustainable and to explain it to companies. To explain it also not only to the big guys, but also to the medium and small companies, which usually need more help. And if you see the project and the success, this is really a very fantastic project, which is leading to wonderful results, perhaps should be copied a bit by other countries as well, to put more focus on the design for recycling, design for reuse topic. As I said, it is very important to work with the customers, with the inhabitants, so it is very clear what they should do, which packaging they should sort in there. In the Netherlands, orange bag with the orange hero here, the plastic hero. In the Netherlands, more or less, the collection is done in the same way. They use a blue bag, and they run very famous national campaigns to convince the people, to motivate the people to do the additional step. But all my members are working on this field of education, on projects to stop litter, to remove existing litter. So if you go to our homepage, you can find a lot of inspiration, I think, what is possible to improve the system, to work with all the different stakeholders. And if we did something wrong, like there is too much litter, there are projects like Libera in Spain to remove this litter with the help of the public again. But why is this relevant for industry? Why should industry be engaged in EPR? I think it is clear that each country, each government will do something on packaging. And usually they do bans or taxes where we have no influence at all. The upcoming global plastic treaty will increase the pressure even on those countries which have not done something up to now. So a chance for industry to be proactive and to start EPR systems to avoid bad legislation. And in the countries which have an EPR system, be engaged as well, because the costs and the scope that we have to cover is increasing as well. So be in the board, be at the steering table, and then you can also decide how the fees should look like, what projects to do. So you are not just signing a check, you are part of the community to steer the system of your country. And I think our inhabitants, the consumers, expect this from us. We have to give them a solution. We have to solve the problem of plastic in the nature, in the ocean. We have to give them a good feeling that we can buy our products in a packaged way, in the best packaging possible, whether reuse, whether one way, whatever is, there is a solution, and we do not have to think about is this good or bad, or should we stop consuming? Especially seeing the climate change, we have to upgrade our efforts much more so that we have a positive carbon footprint in the end, in the best possible. And recycling, recycling is contributing to a decrease in our carbon footprint. With every ton we recycle plastics, for example, we are saving more than 1 ton of CO2. And of course, please, there are so many wonderful industry platforms for plastics, for metals, for paper, for glass, where you as a company can engage. Here, we are looking all together for better solutions, and with the power of industry, we can really move something. See the Holy Grail with a new idea how to label packaging so that our sorting machines can understand it in a better way, but also the consumer could use this labeling to understand how he could sort the packaging, plus all the other benefits from a digital labeling. Please join us there, work with us together so that we can improve all our packaging. Just at the end, it will go on. The legislator thinks we need much more to do. The revision of the packaging directive, packaging regulation is going on. And as you can see, just on one slide, what they propose. They will introduce minimum reuse targets, minimum recycled content targets for each packaging, even food sensitive. We will have to reduce the total amount of packaging put on the market 5% within a few years, up to 15% until 2040. So really reduce the packaging we put on the market. I think we have to be very clever to avoid that this will mean that we have to reduce consumption, because I think this is not something we would like to see. We would like to grow, but at the same time reduce our environmental footprint. For labeling, there will be a harmonization so that not each country can introduce their own labels, like France. Up to now, a lot of new additional EPR minimum requirements, a mandatory DRS for countries which are not able to perform. So countries with a good system, they still can continue with their EPR system without a DRS system. So a lot is coming up. The Commission has published their proposal. It is now delivered to the Parliament and to the Council of Member States. They are now working on their own position. And then, hopefully, in summer, the famous trialogue negotiations between Parliament, Council, and Commission will start, perhaps resulting in an agreed new regulation ready before a new Parliament and a new Commission will be elected mid-term 24. Again, join your associations, speak to your local ministries to ensure that your interests are taken into account. If you don't tell anyone what are your interests, so don't be surprised that they are not taken into account. And in the next step, the Waste Framework Directive will be revised as well. So I think a lot of work is coming, but a lot of opportunities as well, because it's still some way to make all our packaging sustainable, circular, and to stop the use of unnecessary packaging. I think all of us, when we order via online sales something, we get a headache when we see how much packaging is still used. I'm wondering how this is still possible. So it seems that the EPR fees are by far too cheap, minimum for these companies. Perhaps they even don't pay. So we have to ensure that also in online sales, all companies are complying with the EPR legislation and of course with all other obligations they have. Thank you very much. I hope I was able to give you a little bit of understanding what is happening in EPR, what is happening in the packaging waste sector, and hope to see you soon, live and in color in the best way during one of the other conferences. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching our Circular Economy conference. For more news on sustainable packaging, please visit our website and follow us on social media.